And another case that I want to briefly tell you about is a fascinating study where a huge amount of research went into solving a really big problem. Here, corn is one of the main staple crops, and other grains as well, in Africa. And they were having tremendous losses due to an insect called the stem borer. So these are the larvae of the stem borer. It was leading to 80% losses in the maize plants. And at the same time, there was another pest, which is a parasitic weed, a weed that parasitizes the roots of the corn. And that was leading sometimes up to 100% of losses, especially in combination. So this was affecting a large area of Kenya and other countries in Africa as well. So this really intricate research effort went forward to come up with a new system that would work better. And what they found was if they planted a grass called Napier grass near the corn, that it would actually attract, by emitting chemicals, certain chemicals, it would attract the stem borers out into the Napier grass, and they would lay their eggs on the Napier grass instead of on the corn. But then when the larvae began to feed, it would cause the Napier grass to emit a sticky substance that would literally envelop the larvae and trap them and kill them. So this was a very effective way of controlling the population. And another thing that they did was to plant another plant called, it's a nitrogen fixer called Desmodium, which emitted chemicals that actually repelled the stem borer moths away from the corn. And so that would push them out into the Napier grass where that trapping could happen. And at the same time, this amazing plant would not only fix nitrogen, but also produce yet another chemical, a root exudate, that would cause those little parasitic weed seeds to germinate, but would not allow them to attach to the maize roots. And so it would cause what's suicidal germination is the literal term. So this is an amazing system, and there must be like 50 papers, 50 research papers that were produced to develop this incredibly intricate system with a knowledge of the detailed chemical ecology. Here's what it looks like in place. And then looking at some data of what's actually happened. The white bars here are always the push-pull system compared with just the regular maize monocrop system. And so what you see here in the top panel is that the striga weed is decreasing greatly. You see the stem borers are decreasing greatly. And then you see the yields are increasing greatly, about doubling of yields. So it's a really effective system. And they've also looked a little bit further out from just that system and the effect on the corn to look at other things too, because the Napier grass is actually a fodder grass. It's a grass that can be used in cattle production. So it becomes really, really powerful. You've got the control of these two pests. You've got increased crop yields, but you've also got increased fodder production because of the Napier grass, which improves cattle health. That improves dairy production, which improves human nutrition. And also the improved cattle health leads to more manure that improves soil health. You've also got the nitrogen fixing Desmodium that also improves soil health. And because you have all of these things happening, you have increased household income, which leads to empowerment of women. So you have it all, basically. And the point is that these agroecological approaches have a large potential for providing a holistic solution, something that's more than let's just increase yields. Here we're increasing yields, but so many other things are happening here, and that's what's really important. We need these holistic solutions. So to sum up this section on, and I'm getting close to the end here, why agroecology matters, why we need to make this shift from industrial agriculture to agroecology. These diversified agroecological systems provide significant benefits for sustainability, as I've shown, and also they're also highly productive, particularly compared to subsistence systems. But I'd argue with enhanced research, they can really stand up there with the conventional systems too. These systems are typically operated in small to mid-sized farms, and that's why it's really important when we think about supporting, getting rid of this hunger issue. We need to be supporting small to mid-sized farmer. That's the key to reducing world hunger for two reasons. The first reason is because smallholders are actually producing a large proportion of the food. I've seen different estimates, but it's somewhere between 50 and 70%. So we need to support them because they're producing so much of the food. Of those smallholders, it's estimated that about half of them are currently using resource conserving or agroecological methods. That's great that half of them are already doing this, but that means that half of them aren't doing it. And so there's room for improvement in both productivity and sustainability if we could get the other 50% to uptake these methods, if we could provide the support, the extension, and the research that's needed so that they could uptake these methods and improve their own livelihoods. And the other reason is that small-scale farmers make up a huge number of the farms and also the majority of the people who are paradoxically hungry or malnourished. So again, it's really important to be able to improve the productivity of the small-scale farmers for their own livelihoods, and so that we can deal with this hunger problem because they're actually making up a large component of it. So I want to talk about my final point now, which is thinking about the shift from corporate control to democratically determined food systems. And so it's important to think about how is the food system currently organized. We have about 1.5 billion people that produce food and 7 billion that consume it. And, but we have a very small number of companies that provide some of the key inputs for farming, the seeds, the fertilizers, the machinery. And we also have a very small number of agri-food companies that are purchasing the food, or purchasing the raw materials from the producers and transforming it into the myriads of products that are on our supermarket shelves and selling it to us. So in a world with 7 billion food consumers and 1.5 billion food producers, no more than 500 companies control 70% of food choice. It's kind of amazing. So the growers are really in between these input companies that they have to purchase key inputs from, and the agri-food industries, particularly the traders and processors that are purchasing the products from them. And because there are so few purchasers and so few input companies, these companies have a lot of control on what the growers are doing. And so the growers are getting squeezed. And I think a really evocative way to illustrate this is by looking at the seed industry. And this is a diagram that was produced by Phil Howard at Michigan State University, and really amazingly evocative work. What you see here is how all of these companies, each of these ovals here represents a company, how they're now all sort of related and subsumed by much larger companies. And so these big red circles here are chemical companies that have purchased many of the seed companies. And so we see familiar names: Monsanto, DuPont, I can't read these very well, but Syngenta, Dow, and Bayer. I think Bayer's up here and Dow's here. They've purchased all these seed companies, so now they're selling seeds. And so the growers actually don't have that many options as, where are they going to buy their seeds? It's probably going to end up, looks like there's lots of companies, but there aren't really, because they've all been purchased. So, that means that these companies can exert an awful lot of control over what's available in terms of seeds. And it's interesting also that the chemical companies got into the seed business. Why is that? Well, it makes a lot of sense when you think that now not only neonicotinoids are packaged on seeds, but also a wide array of other pesticides, fungicides, for example, can be packaged. And sometimes a seed is packaged with several pesticides on it, a fungicide and a neonicotinoid or various others. So it's a way for the chemical companies to continue selling their products literally wrapped around the seed, or through genetic engineering, their chemical products can be produced inside the seed, as in the BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, or it could be that the genetic engineering requires the purchase of a companion pesticide like an herbicide like Roundup. So it makes sense that the chemical companies have done this, but it creates a lot of pressure on the growers. So the other way that smallholders are increasingly squeezed around the world is about access to land. mean farm size for smallholder has been decreasing in many places. And it's often too small to create a livelihood. And this is why we have the phenomenon of poverty and hunger often on smallholder farms. This is related to land grabs, which are displacing smallholders from their lands. And I'd like to just give you a moment to read the comic strip, which pretty much sums it up. And let me go into my final slide here for my talk, and then I want to talk just a little bit about the Berkeley Food Institute. So